For everything from questions about cucumbers to homes on cul-de-sacs, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb in Real Estate Show with Stan DeFreitas, the dad, and James DeFreitas, the son. For the next hour, call in with your questions about gardening, growing your favorite veggies, and growing your profits in real estate. Call them anytime at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we are here. We're glad that you are with us. I am, of course, the dad, Stan, and you are the son, James DeFreitas. And you own Dream It Real Estate. And if people can dream it, you can make it happen, right?
That's correct, actually, yeah. And if you want to get in touch with me, you certainly can. Again, my number is 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And, of course, you can always visit my website, which is dreamirealestate.co. So it's all spelled out, no dots or dashes. But, again, .co is the part that usually causes people to, I'm used to .com. What's this .co? Well, it takes you to the same place. So needless to say, just .co, one letter less that you have to remember to put in. But if you put in the .com, it will not get to me. So it's important to write that down. And while we're on the topic of websites, you can also, if you have a gardening question, you can visit Stan's website. You go to askmrgreenthumb.com. That's ASKMR greenthumb.com. And you can click up in the left corner of the screen. You can click on the Ask button. You can do this directly through your phone, so you don't even have to reach for a desktop or a laptop. You can do it directly from your phone. And the cool thing is if you do it from your phone, you can easily attach photos that you've recently taken. So if you have a question about a tree that you think isn't doing right or isn't looking healthy, you can submit a photo. We recommend submitting a couple of photos. Let's say you're just not an internet person and then none of this really works for you. Well, you can give Stan a call at 727-423-4686, right?
No, that's wrong number.
Okay, wrong number. Tell them what it is.
727-423-4794.
Thank you. There you go. I knew. See, if I said it wrong, now you'll correct me.
No,
say it again.
That was my old number. 727-423-4794.
See, by saying it wrong, I now got you to say it a couple of more times right.
Make it right.
There you go.
And it's easy to do. You know, it's funny when you have numbers in your brain, and we all do. I had my Bank of America stole my card last week. I went in to make a deposit, and it went, can't accept, and it took my card.
Well, with your account, I kind of understand
it was
why.
going negative numbers. What do you mean you want money?
Exactly.
And but I went and called the number for the young lady who I talked to, who was very nice out of South Carolina. And she goes, what's your number? And I gave her my number, and she was so surprised that I could give her my whole account number.
Don't give it on the air.
I won't do it on the air.
Thank you.
But it started out with a 00.
Sure.
You know, if you can gain it from that, then good on you.
Right.
But anyway, she was going, well, nobody knows their number. And I said, well, I do, because it's on every
Well,
check
you've had
card.
it for 40 years.
Yeah, I've had it for a good long time.
Right. So you're going to. So here's an interesting. I always like these common question and answers that are asked This is through the Pinellas. Well, let me get it right. I always like to give credit. This is through Realtor View magazine, and so they always post questions and answers that I think are interesting and are relevant in the real estate space, and that's something that I am in. And one of the questions that it asks is, and again, this has kind of become a very broad topic that people are discussing right now, is artificial intelligence. And, it's one of these things where, it impacts every field.
AI, right?
Yeah, AI. So artificial intelligence, simply, abbreviated with AI. So, but it impacts every area. And I mean, even the writer strike and that you see out there in California, that's part of that. Their issues are with artificial intelligence and the use thereof.
Because some of these things can auto-generate scripts and things without having to have people.
Right. And so the question that's being asked is, it says, I've been using artificial intelligence tools to write my listing descriptions. Plus, I use it in my business in other ways, too. Who owns the copyright, me or the robot?
I would say the robot.
Yeah, well, here's...
Or whoever made the robot.
So one of the things that's interesting here is it's new. And anytime something is new, the courts haven't seen it yet. So we're not sure how to regulate something that, but there are some simple answers that you have to keep in mind is that at the end of the day, the, again, to use the analogy that might have been used in your school years, the dog ate my homework. You can't use the dog ate my homework excuse for AI either when you put up information that's against the rules. Okay. And real estate advertising has laws, and those laws must be abided. And if you don't, you can't just say the dog ate my homework. The robot did it, not me. That's not going to fly. You set the robot in motion. So remember, without you, the robot didn't do anything.
So you're still ultimately responsible.
Correct. So that's kind of but again, we're getting into that area where, well, it came up with it on its own. I didn't tell it to do that. Well, you decided to use said tool, and you may not have fully understood what said tool could do, and that tool didn't really understand the legal parameters in with which your field is governed.
Do you mean you have to have like informed consent?
Well, you have to make sure that you're paying attention to what the tool does. And so what people want to do, people want the path of least resistance. They want to set something up and let it just do its thing.
Sure.
That's the simplest thing. The problem is you have to go back and look to see what the unintended consequences are of that. And so in this particular case, let's see, it says there are murky legal issues involving AI generated works. For example, it says plaintiff Stephen Thaler is suing U.S. Copyright Office, Thaler versus Perlmutter, because it denied him copyright ownership for an image produced by his AI system, the creativity machine. He claims it was a work made for hire between himself and the AI generator. There are many more lawsuits, and the cases have a lot of unanswered questions for real estate practitioners and others seeking to use AI evolving technology. Nonetheless, the Code of Ethics offers some guidance in this area, and it says under Article 2, Section 12, Article 2 holds that realtors shall avoid exaggeration, misrepresentation, or concealment of pertinent facts related to the property or the transaction. Article 12 says realtors shall be honest and truthful in their real estate communications and present a true picture in their advertising, marketing, and other representations. So what you can assume from that is that if the AI generator is doing something beyond the scope of that, you are probably in violation of those ethics. So again, setting it up and not paying attention to what it does is probably a problem, and it's going to set you up for potentially a lawsuit. So again, the three takeaways they've come up with this scenario that I've just read you is review all generated content for accuracy. So that's kind of what I've already said. I didn't even read what the takeaways were. So I've already kind of come up with what I think is a good policy based on the scenario. So here's number 2, don't use AI to create something you want to be able to protect. Okay, so that's the second takeaway. Okay. In other words, you may be using a great tool, and that at the end of the day, it may come up with something better than you thought of, but you may actually owe somebody money for the thing that it came up with.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
If somebody created that idea.
Right. So it's back to your thoughts again. Probably the robot is what you said when we first started talking about this. Don't assume, here's the third thing, don't assume any third-party content was created by AI and available for you to use. In other words, if somebody's already come up with something, don't assume that because it's available that you could just snatch it and use it. Okay?
No.
So always get permission in writing. And this is, one of the things nobody does is they don't want to put it in writing. Always get permission in writing for the way you intend to use someone's work, and then save that documentation in case someone has short-timer's disease, which people do. They get into, well, I don't remember saying that. Well, you signed it right here. You can show them, and then you can say, well, no, this is your signature, is it not? Well, yes, it is my signature. Oh, I did agree to that. But even in real estate transactions, I always find real estate agents are so comforted by the fact of a contract, and they think that it's great. Well, let me just remind you that a contract is only as good as your intentions of enforcing it. Now, when you go to enforce a contract, you'll never do business with that individual ever again. And that person will go tell 100 other people that you enforced a contract, and they think you're kind of a doo-doo head.
Sure.
And that's the takeaway. So you have to keep that in mind with enforcement. And then sometimes there's brokerage enforcement, meaning the company you work for is going to enforce something just because it wants to protect something that it feels that is being violated on their end, like a commission check that I know when you bring the client to you, that's my client. No, it's the brokerage client. Okay. Remember that. You may have brought the client wouldn't have ever known about the brokerage you work for without you. So it feels like it's your client, but it's not your client. It's the brokerage's client.
That's true.
Yes.
But you also, the brokerage must, if there's stipulated in the contract that you're going to get paid, then you shall get paid by the brokerage if you follow the deal through.
Right. The brokerage always hands out the check. So that's how that works.
Well, that's true. And, someone asked an interesting question the other day, and they said, what about, different splits between different companies? Mm-hmm. And they said, shouldn't it all be equal? And I said, not necessarily. Every company, each broker can decide what their company split is.
Right. Well, and what I think you're alluding to is a case that's been settled. But there was a case, and I won't even mention the names of the parties of it. But there was a case where you had one broker that, was upset that, he was showing properties to another person's brokerage and they weren't dividing the commission equally.
They don't have to.
Well, and here's my thoughts on it. Okay. And actually, I don't really have enough time to discuss my thoughts on it, but I will say this, being a selling agent requires more work oftentimes than a buying agent. Not always, but mostly. Okay. I mean, there's always that, well, no, you don't know this buyer. And you know what? You're right. I don't know that potential buyer.
Especially if you got to show them 25 homes and they go off to Bobby.
And that happens too, and that's part of the nature of the game, which now that you mention that, I'll mention something when we come back that I think is interesting that we should talk about in terms of a buyer-broker agreement.
Stay with us as the Plant Talk, Real Estate Talk continues here on AM 860. Make sure those plants get enough water. Get out there and water them if they're looking wilted, and they probably do. Stay with us as the Plant Talk and Real Estate Talk continues here on AM 860, The Answer.
Want to talk real estate? Call James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127 or go online, aflre.com.
Why choose Stafford Tree Service? Is it because they're experienced, have the latest equipment, and friendly professional personnel? Absolutely. Stafford's positioned themselves as a leading tree trimming company in all of Tampa Bay. With honest professionals and competitive pricing, they'll earn your trust too. In business for over 15 years, Stafford Tree Service is licensed, bonded, and insured to provide you the very best tree trimming experience. Call today, 727-546-8786, 727-546-8786. On the web at staffordtreesvc.com.
Biophilia, our innate attraction to other living things. It's why people love plants. And around Tampa Bay, Plants, that's Plantz, is bringing nature inside in workspaces and homes by delivering beautiful foliage plants. Our plants increase oxygen and filter out pollutants, reducing stress and improving productivity. And get you in touch with your biophilic side. Go to plantz.us.
At Dream It Real Estate, we're a different kind of real estate company. We embolden our clients to dream their biggest dreams and partner with us to make those dreams come true. Our emphasis is on team building with clients who become friends for a lifetime. For more information, please go to dreamitrealestate.co or call or text James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127. Dream It Real Estate is always encouraging our clients to dream big with us today. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Connect online at askmrgreenthumb.com. Got questions about gardening, real estate, or both? Give them a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we're here, of course, to answer your questions that may arise. I said water, water, water everywhere. We're getting some water, but remember, when it's feeling awfully hot out there, no doubt we're getting some climate change. I mean, I'm not saying that we're always responsible. The climate's always
crisis.
Well, I don't know. We need a crisis, but we do have some change. It is hot. It does seem hotter than ever. So some of your plants are going to need more water.
Right.
And if you can get reclaimed water, I know I had to fight for it in my area. They didn't want to run the pipe. I said, you're, 50 feet away from me, or maybe 80 feet. I said, please run the pipe. I want to use your reclaimed because it cuts down on drinking potable water. And it's a grand idea. Yes, it has a little more salt in it. So if you've got a ton of azaleas, you might have a problem. Azaleas don't like over 1,000 parts per million. But in general, most of your plants aren't going to be a problem. And even if it's edibles, if you wash things well, you're not having to worry about disease problems. And that's kind of a fallacy that people go, oh God, because you use reclaim, you're going to have a problem. It just doesn't occur. But wash things. Bacteria are out there all the time. Fungi are out there all the time. We have a million spores. If you didn't have some fungi in your, or not fungi, but bacteria in your system, you wouldn't live.
True.
So good bacteria is good.
Very true. And one of the things that we were just before we left for the last break, one of the things I was talking about is, in terms of real estate, one of the things I was mentioning is this is a scenario that occurs a lot. Okay. And this was an article that was written by a guy named Joel Maxon. So I'm making sure I give him credit before I just start discussing it a little bit. And he wrote an article called Legal Loyalty. And this is a very important area. And this is something that's very uncommon. Okay. And this is something I think in the industry should become more common. What happens is it's all done on faith, or I hope they remember me, or blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't always work out this way. When you're acting for a buyer, one of the things that's annoying is that you'll take the buyer out to lunch or coffee or this or that or what have you, and you'll pay for everything with the anticipation that you think that person will have some loyalty to you. Well, one of the ways that you can get around that is by creating legal loyalty, okay? Legal loyalty means that if they decide they want to go off with XYZ Realty instead of using you, then you can, say, hey, Mr. Buyer, I already invested some time, effort, and money with you, and I'd like you to be loyal to me. Now, in today's society, you're saying, how can that possibly be necessary? Because everyone's already loyal. Well,
a lot of people aren't loyal and they aren't very ethical.
Right. So one of the things that he starts the article out with is he says, some transactions don't include any formal agreement. Well, let me just say, most transactions on the buying side don't have any formal agreement. And most of the time, here's something else, because it's so uncommon, a lot of agents aren't even aware that there is something called a buyer's broker's agreement. And so what that buyer-broker agreement does is it says, hey, listen, Mr. Buyer, I'm going to invest some time into you. Make sure that you reciprocate when you decide to buy something. Now, it has to be, you have to have a beginning and end time. It can't be to the end of the earth. That's not going to work. But you do have to have a beginning and end time. You have to make sure that they understand that a legal relationship has now been claimed by you and that they agreed to it.
Sure.
Okay.
Good idea, actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a bad idea. And it basically needs to describe the type of property that the buyer is looking for. If they decide to buy something radically different than what they were engaging with you, then maybe that buyer-broker agreement doesn't exactly apply. Let's say the person was looking at a private residence with you, but then decides to buy a 5-apartment complex for a business opportunity with a different brokerage. Well, I'm not sure that that's the same type of relationship that he was employing your services for. So that would materially be different. So that wouldn't, you need to specify what that relationship is that you're trying to seek out.
Maybe put all in there.
Well, you would have to put something in there that if you're buying anything in the residential space, that's fine. If you're buying something commercial and that's not something you do, then that would be something different.
Sure.
So you would need to kind of explain that a little bit.
There are differences in real estate. I agree with that.
Right. So that would be something very different. You need to, and also this article says that you need to provide a specific list of ways that the buyer must cooperate with the brokerage. In other words, you need to make sure that there is language in there that explains that if you do A, you buy through me.
Right.
You need to pay attention to this.
You mean their word in bond doesn't mean anything?
It hasn't for quite some time, and you know this. There also should be a protection portion too in there, so that even at the end of the termination of the agreement, that there are aspects that would live on for a specific time at a designated termination date. In other words, hey, you can't show, if I show you this beautiful house and then 2 weeks after, you wait until 2 weeks after our agreement expires to go cut your own deal, well, that wouldn't be fair either, would it? So again, fairness works both ways for both the agent and the buyer. And so I just want to remind people that, having a buyer's agent go invest a lot of time with you and then going and using your family member is, or someone like a family member, which is often the case, it's not fair because that person spent a lot of time, effort, and gas driving you around maybe to different places. This just for you to say, oh no, I'm not doing it. And yeah, that's the issue that a lot of young, or when I say young, I mean new to the business buying agents get into. But what I'm saying is you only, if you implement this type of strategy in your business, then you've built in a protection mechanism.
Sure.
So once you know about this, and now that you've been made aware of this, anytime that you get taken advantage of, it's because you didn't protect yourself.
So be protective.
And be prepared to enforce it when people get upset that you're enforcing it. Well, that's too bad because what you signed matters. I'm sorry, but contracts mean something.
You mean between the four corners?
Right.
Well, the same thing somebody asked me recently. What about if you took somebody out and you got them drunk or you gave them drugs? Mm-hmm. Would that be the time to do a legal contract?
No.
Could you change things at the last minute and say, I'm going to sell you this property. I know you're under whatever.
Right. If you're under the influence, or even if you're not of sound mind. Let's say you're an elderly person and you're not able to make decisions for yourself. Well, your surrogate would have to step in. And if your surrogate doesn't step in to answer those questions for you, then it isn't legal. And that's a very well-established legal principle. I'm not giving advice. I'm stating what I know to be true. So, so that's a very good point, and it's something that people need to think about, in terms of when they're, and again, it's called informed consent. And make sure that if you're having anything done in the real estate space or medical space that you are getting informed consent. Otherwise, you may wake up with a surprise. With that noise, we're going to go pay some bills. Don't change that dial or to click off that phone, and you can take it away.
Yeah, if you don't hit that dial, don't change that frequency. We're here on AM 860, The Answer.
Interested in having a home consult? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at AskMrGreenthumb.com. At Dream It Real Estate, we're a different kind of real estate company. We embolden our clients to dream their biggest dreams and partner with us to make those dreams come true. Our emphasis is on team building with clients who become friends for a lifetime. For more information, please go to dreamitrealestate.co or call or text James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127. Dream It Real Estate is always encouraging our clients to dream big with us today. Did you know that Stan DeFreitas, Mr. Green Thumb, can come to your house and examine your plants, trees, and palms? His knowledge can help you become the envy of your neighborhood with lush, green, healthy trees that don't just live, but thrive. Palms and oak trees are part of what makes Florida a beautiful place to live. But they get diseases and are often cut down. We offer ways to save your trees. Call or text Stan today at 727-423-4794 or go online to AskMrGreenthumb.com. That's AskMrGreenthumb.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Green Thumb and Real Estate Show. Got questions about perennial flowers? What about issues with closing on your newest property? Give them a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
We're here to help answer your questions. If you've got a question about trees or shrubs, I've been doing this for probably 50 years, and which means probably know most of the questions that show up. If you've got sap, sawdust on that tree, send me a picture of your tree. I'm amazed the number of people who wait till the tree is totally dead And then I have to recommend you to a tree service. And if you're not shocked on pricing, wait till you get a bill to take a tree down totally. You can save that tree. The squirrels are going to thank you for it. The birds are going to thank you for it. Your cooling bill is going to thank you for it. And it makes the neighborhood.
Right.
So save those trees. Trees are important. Don't wheeze, plant trees, and get on board with that.
I agree. And actually, I took a little bit of video here, and this is some video that was trimmed around my property recently. And what's cool about this is a lot of people have no idea of the damage that borers are doing. But I wanted to show the pocketing of what's taking place inside the tree, because you can't see it until the tree is already in a situation where it's ready for failure.
And you wouldn't notice that unless you notice the bark cracking and splitting from the outside.
Right. And so one of the reason I took this video and put it on my Facebook page, and of course, if you're interested in seeing more about what I do or how we do what we do, you can always type in my first and last name into Facebook. And of course, I can add you as a friend if you're interested. And then you can see all the videos that I do talking about trees and stuff. And actually, people seemingly know me better now from all the videos that I'm posting about trees and tree consultations than they'd seem to know about the real estate aspect of our business as well. So again, you can't pigeonhole me. I am a man of many talents, and I like to save trees as much as I like to sell real estate. So maybe I can sell you some real estate that has lots of trees, and then I can tell you about
how to save them.
So
I agree.
there you go. So, but yeah, that's why I did that video, because I know people that are listening to the show can't see it. But one of the things I would say is that the video that I was showing it just showed this big hole in the center of the tree that had been eaten out, and it's definitely one of the things that we're always concerned about, and one of the things that we've done before is a tree risk assessment. Well, what's a tree risk assessment? Well, tree risk assessments are becoming more and more of the, when you're looking to, say you have a business, you want to expand your business, you want to grow, and you want to, potentially have create additional space at your business. Well, one of the things you're going to be hit with is you're going to have to provide, as part of your permitting process, you're going to have a tree risk assessment performed, and you're going to have a certified arborist do that. And let me just say, we have a lot of certified arborists that have now become certified because they want to be able to do their tree work and add some credentials to their truck. And you wouldn't necessarily want them to be the ones doing the this type of service.
I make the analogy the fox in the hen house.
Well, yeah, and again, it's I'm not even
not all of them, but some.
I'm not even referring to the fact that they sign off on their own work. I'm saying that if you're really good at trimming down trees, that's probably your thing. And what I'm saying is that may not represent the right person for creating reports, or something that you could show to a city, or something that would be a good representation in court. That's not to say that tree trimming people are not smart. They are very smart.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is that's the area that they focus on getting really good at. One of the areas that Stan and I did not focus on getting really good at is, going out and getting multi-millions of dollars worth of tree trimming equipment and going into that space. But one of the areas that we really did focus at getting really good at is making sure that we understand what they understand, and then we are able to be a good representation for you in a court setting if you have, say, an eminent domain proceeding that's taking place, or if you need a tree risk assessment done. We're really good at making those reports and in making sure that you get the next process in that hurdle completed for the, what I would consider more intellectual work. And again, I'm not diminishing the tree trimming work. It's backbreaking and it's hard work, and they make a lot of money for it, and they should. But I think there's enough people in that space doing that sort of thing. And so that's one of the areas that Stan and I have kind of just chosen to focus on less.
Sure.
So maybe tell people a little bit more about why a tree risk assessment is necessary.
Well, they want to keep track of what's there. I mean, in the old days, people would come in and, there's a shopping center at Belcher Road and Gulf to Bay. Mm-hmm. At one time, they came in, they actually re-landscaped it, which makes it look better. But at one point, they came in and took down every tree in there, and they put in some stupid cabbage palms. Now, the lady who owned the property,
But I like cabbage palms.
yeah, they're okay.
It's a Florida native.
It's a Florida state tree.
Right.
But they re-landscaped it and put in some more landscaping. I knew the landscaper that did the work. I also knew that the person who owned it was an heir to a billion-dollar inheritance. That property being part of it, they said, hey, we can put in a Publix, we can put in all these stores, more parking lot, more asphalt, tear down the trees and put up a parking lot.
Urban sprawl.
And that's what they did there. I actually mentioned it on the air, and I heard from my landscaping buddy one time who goes, hey, the lady who owns the property heard you mentioning her particular property, and she's hired me to go out there and re-landscape it. And I said, well, good, it needs it. It
Right.
needs more trees, and as much as we need some asphalt, you got plenty of places for parking.
Right.
And that's what he did. He's actually a good landscaper, actually a former student of mine. And I do think you need to think about having a professional landscape company come in, do a plan, work with you, figure out what you like, what you dislike, what works.
Right.
Just
What's going to work? And that's a great point, because I want to add to that, just if I could, is, we see this all the time. They'll put a road through, or they'll do this or that. And, and maybe the tree is just a victim of where it is. Okay. But often what we'll see a purposeful plan of planting a tree, let's say a live oak tree. If it is flanked to the right and left by asphalt, and it only has a 2-foot space on either side, it's not going to do well.
it's going to have a problem. And if you go through there and cut all the roots on one side,
It's going to have a problem.
what could possibly go wrong?
You've weakened it. Yeah. And so, yes, it's one of those things where, and let me also say too, if you know anybody that ever works in the condemning authority, I know that the counties and plus, they're all, wanting to still take property, and they're wanting to do it on the cheap. But remember, when you decide that you're going to condemn somebody's property and you're going to take it through eminent domain and use force, essentially, through the legal process, you have to compensate those people. And part of compensating those people is making sure that the people that help to provide an accurate assessment of that compensation are also compensated. And, so let me just say, and a lot of people don't know the process of eminent domain, but let me demystify it for you just a little bit. One of the things that these counties have come up with is a really cute little phrase called universal settlement. And these universal settlements is a great way to make sure everybody that ever worked on the case takes a universal amount. And that universal amount usually is a fraction of what that person actually billed in the time that they put into that case. And so I ask you, would you be happy working your 2-week job, putting in for 80 hours that you put in for that job, and then them coming back and telling you, well, I know you worked 80 hours, but we feel like 15 hours is all we really want to pay. And by the way, we know that you put in for, $25 an hour, but really we've already passed a law in our county that says the most we'll ever pay is $18. Well, that's what they're doing. Now, different amounts. It's just a hypothetical scenario.
Sure.
But that's what the counties are doing. So I ask you, is that fair? And is that something, and you may not even be aware that your county has done this.
Sure.
Okay, because who attends these boring meetings that they put on, on TV going, and now here, we're going to talk about the next thing. We're going to have a red light put here on the third light, and now we're going to talk about that for 27 minutes. Your time, sir.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, it's boring, so nobody pays attention to it. And they're counting on you not paying attention to it.
That's true.
Yeah. So anyways, I've just demystified a thing for our audience with regards to something that takes place all over Florida, and actually for every county in the land. There are eminent domain proceedings taking place everywhere, some that are more impactful than others. But again, remember the right of eminent domain is supposed to be for a public good. So if your county is taking the land so they can put up a new mini mall, I don't know, is that truly a public good? Is that something that you really need? Is a developer making money because of it? You need to make sure that that's being challenged. so that it meets that litmus test.
And is the person looking at the trees, are they a certified arborist like I am?
Right.
And are they a horticulturist? If it's a ligustrum or viburnum,
Right.
arborists don't necessarily know their landscape plants. And just because an engineer might know, he can identify it with his camera that that's this, does he have the qualifications to go to court and actually identify that plant?
Right. And I liken it to add on to what you just said. I would liken what I see other people doing that they're so willing to do in our sandbox. I would wonder how it would come across if we said, well, I was out there counting these trees and I noticed that you have 10 penny nails that are being used. Really would recommend the engineer use 12 penny nails. I think it would go over like a lead balloon if you started adding that to your report as to why you thought the engineer, or if you've mentioned anything engineering-wise to an engineer on your horticultural report, how that would go over.
Yeah, I talked to an appraiser once, and he goes, tree's a tree.
Right.
And I go, well, no, it's not just a tree, it's a tree. Just because you could identify as a tree, it's a tree, that is very impressive. But you might want to know what type of trees, because trees have different values.
Correct. And again, we can talk a little bit more, too, when we come back from the break, which we're going to soon. But we can talk a little bit about what's having taken place with regards to valuing of trees in the state of Florida and how some of the, you could either say the greatest legal minds or the smallest of legal minds are interpreting how trees should be valued in the state of Florida. And that'll be an interesting topic to return to when we come back from break.
Go out and take a look at that mulch layer, too. If you haven't added any mulch to it in the last 10 years, you probably need to, because things need to be, spritzed up from a look point of view, but also to help hold that moisture. And it's going to make a difference for you. Stay with us as the Plant Talk and Real Estate Talk continues here on AM 860, The Answer.
Want to talk real estate? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at AskMrGreenthumb.com. At Dream It Real Estate, we're a different kind of real estate company. We embolden our clients to dream their biggest dreams and partner with us to make those dreams come true. Our emphasis is on team building with clients who become friends for a lifetime. For more information, please go to dreamitrealestate.co or call or text James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127. Dream It Real Estate is always encouraging our clients to dream big with us today.
Why choose Stafford Tree Service? Is it because they're experienced, have the latest equipment, and friendly professional personnel? Absolutely. Stafford's positioned themselves as a leading tree trimming company in all of Tampa Bay. With honest professionals and competitive pricing, they'll earn your trust too. In business for over 15 years, Stafford Tree Service is licensed, bonded, and insured to provide you the very best tree trimming experience. Call today, 727-546-8786, 727-546-8786. On the web at StaffordTreeSVC.com.
Biophilia, our innate attraction to other living things. It's why people love plants. And around Tampa Bay, Plants, that's PLANTZ, is bringing nature inside in workspaces and homes by delivering beautiful foliage plants. Our plants increase oxygen and filter out pollutants, reducing stress and improving productivity. And get you in touch with your biophilic side. Go to plantz.us.
Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Connect online at AskMrGreenthumb.com. Got questions about gardening, real estate, or both? Give him a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we were talking about trees as we ended our last segment. One of the things we might mention is don't put that mulch up against the trunk too heavy. Keep that mulch a little bit away. Now, I like mulching. I wouldn't go more than about 2 or 3 inches. Don't go into this foot-thick routine. And don't have it up right against the trunk. And if you plant plants, make sure there's a little bit of a breathing area around it. If that tree is constantly staying water, now you're right, the roots can stay in moisture pretty well. But when the bark has moisture against it all the time, there's a whole family called fungi that fungus will grow into the bark, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah,
We just
especially for palm trees.
palm trees, when they see Ganoderma, you see that big half a shelf mushroom, it means the tree is probably going to be dead within the year. Now, if it's on a trunk of a big oak, I've seen trees live with it for 25 years.
Right. It seems to be like almost like they have identified a resistance factor, like they've learned to live with it. Like us with a funny growth on our arm or something.
In general, the tree probably declines more and more, but I think it doesn't the death sentence, as you just said.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that's interesting because in a previous show we had Michael Daly on, and we've treated some of their trees. And some of the trees on their property, I have no doubt that a certified arborist that is in the tree trimming business would have a field day with wanting to cut down some of the trees that he has, because some of them do have Ganoderma on the tree, and some of the branches did look dead up inside the tree that had mushroom growth, and those I would go ahead and tell you to go take down some
Yeah,
of
if
those
it's a dead
branches.
branch, it's not doing any good.
But one of the things that we mentioned to them is that, as you just said, it could live a good long time, even with some of the mushrooms growing off of the base of the bark. It doesn't look the prettiest. We tend to think of, having a nice brown color on the bark. But of course, in nature, you get all kinds of lichens and stuff growing on it, and that's a normal process. Some people want that gone. I'm not sure I fully understand that, but again, my understanding of what looks good and what other people think looks good isn't always the case, because I tend to think that what looks the best is when Mother Nature is doing what Mother Nature does. And I think sometimes people feel like we need to put a human element in between those two things and remove an aspect that doesn't look pretty to them, even though it's a very normal process.
And even the fungi is breaking stuff down. It
Right.
has a place in
plays
nature
a role.
where it takes stuff and makes it, it's the garbage destroyer, if you will. It has to break stuff down. Recycler. Bacteria break things down.
Right.
And, some bacteria are very good for you. Some can kill you. So it depends on the situation.
Right.
In general, we want to get rid of bacteria. We want, keep it in a minimum. On the other hand, if you're eating your yogurt, you're getting some bacteria that has been purposely put into it.
Sure.
If you drink some wine, you're getting some yeast that have been grown into it to change those grapes into a alcoholic beverage.
Sure.
So it really depends on where you're at, where it's at, but we here are trying to say work with nature as much as you can.
I agree.
And, do I think mulching in general makes beds look better? Yeah, I do. Do I think stones helps you a lot? I'm not as big a fan of stone in most situations because it draws a lot of heat.
Yeah, and don't run over stones too either
Exactly.
when you're exiting a property. That's very bad.
And if you do, you send them a landscape build because you've reorganized things.
It. I see how you operate. All right.
There's always
That's an insider joke between Stan and myself about leaving someone's property and not necessarily seeing their rock garden.
Well, you can call it a rock garden if you want.
It's kind of a smashed rock garden now. But the good news is you didn't really, mess up your car too badly.
And you didn't really change the design much. It still looks like flat rocks. But if you think that's a great landscape design, then we have to have a conversation on design ethics.
Exactly. And again, I'm James DeFreitas, and of course, I own Dream It Real Estate. And if you ever have any interest, you want to buy or sell something, of course, I could help you out. You can certainly give me a call at 727-254-7127.
Why shouldn't I go to a big company?
Well, you can go to a big company. There are tons of them out there that you can go to. Some people love to have the name brand because that's what they feel that they need.
I don't see you wearing a bow tie even.
Yeah, well, and I don't typically because I think that it's separate. I think that sort of thing, clients are pretty laid back. I mean, we sold some very expensive real estate, and people will show up, and they would be wearing, shirts and shorts and stuff, and they were very laid back. And so I don't necessarily think that's a requirement. I think you have to judge it by the scenario, and I think that if you're selling multi-million-dollar properties and everyone's dressed nicely, then maybe that you change your pace a bit.
You have a nice head of hair too. You haven't even shaved your head yet.
Yeah. Well, not yet, but one of the things I would mention is that if you are interested in buying or selling, that's something I could certainly help you with, and I'd be happy to be good at doing that for
Well,
you.
people know they like you. They know they like me.
And they trust us, and that's so now we've got the like and the trust handled, and now you know us. So we've handled all three components that are really required. And so what are the good reasons for using a boutique brokerage? Well, one, you're going to get more one-on-one service. Okay, so and in this situation, if you hire me, you're also going to be hiring Stan because we work as a tandem team together. So you're going to get our combined experience. The other thing I would say is there's when you're with a large brokerage, they have a lot of rules that they enact onto their agents. And some of those rules are fine, and some of those rules are very much unnecessary.
Right.
There's also the other thing that I don't like too is that when you're working with a realtor that's with a big company, keep in mind, I mean, often they're paying $200 or more to be a part of that brokerage every month.
Right.
So they have a vested interest of accepting that deal immediately because they want to get paid as quickly as they can. So that, yeah. And I'm not against the idea of getting paid, but just remember, if somebody has this, has a large overhead that they have to continually keep meeting every month.
Sure.
I'm not saying that they won't provide excellent service to you because many of them still do, but they have a vested interest of always recommending you take that particular transaction as quickly as humanly possible. And often I'm going to go back and say, no, you know why? Because my overhead's low. And so I'm going to say, if it's not a deal I would take for myself, then it's not a deal I'm going to recommend to you. Of course, you're the client, so you get the final say, and ultimately we have to do what you say, irrespective of our own opinions. All we really do in the real estate game is try to give you our best opinion and advice on the scenario that you're in. And sometimes you're in a great scenario and sometimes you're not. I would say in the condo space in particular, there's a ton of condos that are sitting on the market and they're not moving like they used to. And so typically what's happening is that, you've got a lot of overpriced units that are on the condo space, and those are just sitting. And so, the only thing the agents know to do at that point is to reduce the price. And they keep reducing the price. That's over and over and over and over again until you're going, well, maybe we should have just started the price lower. Well, yeah, that's probably what you should have done. So keep that in mind.
What about somebody comes out and says, no, the property's worth $3 million. And the property's probably worth $1.5 million maximum.
Right.
But the agent says, no, I've been at it forever and a day, and I know the property will sell for $3 million sometime in the next 20 years.
Well, and again, sometimes there's a scenario where somebody is selling a property for what it could be and not what it is. And I typically sell properties for what they are, not what they could be. So if you're in a scenario where you have, say, a residential home and you're saying, oh, well, that could just be torn down and you could build multifamily on it if the city agrees. Well, now you're selling me a dream of what it might be. And then you're asking me to pay for what it could be in the future. And that's fine. I like the idea, but just remember, you've painted a nice, pretty fairy tale for me. And now you're asking me to pay the fairy tale price. And I'm of the idea of, no, I buy it as I see it. And I don't buy it for what it might be. If you sell me a broken down car that doesn't run, I'm not going to pay you the same price as if you took the time to go get it running.
Well, it makes sense.
I mean, it's just that simple.
You mean you actually want a motor and a battery and the thing actually turns over?
If it has to actually work, and then it's worth more to me. And so, but if you sell me a property that has problems, or it has to have lots of zoning changes, or it has to, now I've got to pay for demolition fees, well, that changes the argument entirely in my favor. And just because you were enticed with a really big price to start with, that doesn't necessarily mean that price ever made sense ever on that property. And sometimes people have to hold things for years before they finally realize that the property wasn't worth that.
We just move the closing date out.
Exactly. Just keep posting it out further and further. And we do want to thank people for taking the time to listen to us. We always want to mention that the great Dr. Bill Handelman is up after us, so don't change that dial. Let you take it away.
And as we always say, remember to don't leave, plant trees, and look at those trees, do your homework, and enjoy your life just as much as possible, as Teddy used to say.
Want to talk real estate? Call James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127 or go online, aflre.com.